是非常荣幸的邀请到在线零售的巨头 Zappos 首席执行官兼首席幸福传递官 Jenn 林女士，和我们一起分享如何打造幸福的企业文化，以及如何将幸福传递给客户的心得。Hello, Jenn.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Okay. We noticed that besides CEO's position, you're also Zappos Chief Happiness Officer for delivering happiness. Is this position created by Zappos first?
Well, actually, the Chief Happiness Officer position is a role within the company delivering happiness, not Zappos. So there's a little bit of separation there since Zappos and delivering happiness are separate companies.
Okay. What are its main responsibilities?
Well, for us, it's kind of like a statement when you have a position like Chief Happiness Officer. We really believe that happiness should be an important part, an integral part of any company culture for all your employees, because the fundamental belief is that if you make your employees happy, then other things like great customer service or higher revenues will come more naturally. And that's just our belief in how companies should be run.
首先，这个幸福传递官是delivering happiness 这个公司旗下的一个职位。那他们就这个 delivering happiness 的一个点就是说，快乐是一个公司非常重要的一个成分。那对员工来说，能够有一个快乐的工作环境是更高收入、更高盈利的基本的保证。
Very good. I have a question because sometimes we're doing the jobs we like, but the payment is not very satisfying. Do you think it's possible for us to remain happy even the payment is not very high?
Yeah, well, the short answer is yes. There's actually a lot of studies done around that in terms of does increasing your pay actually add to an individual's happiness? And depending where you live in the world, there's a certain sort of threshold as to, you need to make enough to, pay your rent, have clothes, eat food, those basic necessities. But studies show that if you go above that, it doesn't necessarily make you a happier person. For example, if you buy a nicer car or if you get a bigger house, it doesn't necessarily make you happy. So for every individual, it's sort of, it's a personal thing. Like, what are the basic things that will make you happy? And then beyond that, other things like spending time with friends or having a family trip, those kind of experiences add more to happiness, not material wealth.
Okay.
那Jenn 认为呢？首先这个答案是不一定的。当然你就是一个基本的工资呢，你是要达到的，比如说你要付自己的房租和基本的生活费。此之外呢，一些奢侈消费，比如说买车啊、买房啊，这些就不一定能够给人带来更多的快乐了。而他认为，花更多的时间和朋友在一起啊，和家人在一起，反而会给人带来更多的快乐。
Okay. I'm very curious because recently if someone, for example, a client promised to give us a car, it's a luxurious car, I'm so excited. So the things, the material things still gives me a huge happiness feeling. Yeah, this is natural,
sure.
Right?
Yeah, and it is natural, it's human nature. But another thing that's very interesting about what we have seen and read in studies of happiness is that that's one form of happiness, and it's very, unfortunately, very short-lived and fleeting. So it's not very sustainable. Like if you get a new car, if you have a perfect date, or you win an award, all those things make you happy, but it's not too long-term. So what's interesting is that the data shows that the other things that make more long-term sustainable happiness are things like engagement, where you engage with your friends or your family, or you engage with your hobbies that make you, feel like time is like you spend 5 hours in your hobby, but feels like no time has passed because you're so engaged in it. And that's the middle type of sustainable happiness. And actually the most long-term sustainable happiness is finding a higher purpose. So doing something beyond yourself, whether it's volunteering or helping out your local charity, those things like those a greater vision outside of what you're doing from a day-to-day basis.
Okay, very interesting.
对，所以 Jenn 觉得说呢，就是快乐分为有3个不同的层次。首先呢，比如说像奢侈品啊、车啊、房啊这种，确实能给人带来快乐，可这种快乐是转瞬即逝的。 那么有更高层次的一种快乐，就是说你投入到某件事情中，比如说和朋友、家人在一起，或者说你的某些爱好。那么他认为最高层次的快乐呢，就是能够找到一个更高的目标，比如说做义工啊、做慈善啊，这样一些能够给人带来长期快乐的事情。
A very interesting question to be continued. Some of the women, they said even they think love is the most important thing in their lives, but they don't think that the men are trustful. If you rely on them too much, you will get hurt. But the material things, for example, the house, the cars, will always belong to you if you work very hard. What's your opinion? What do you think about this situation?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it's a more traditional model of happiness and love is reliant on a man. And in some ways, yeah, you know, when you fall in love, you want to fall in love with someone that you love. And you want that to be sort of, you know, I guess, fulfilling in your life. But I guess what it's coming back to, in my opinion, is that relying on someone else for your happiness is potentially, you're just setting yourself up for failure, because if you don't have happiness within yourself, there's no way you can get it from someone else, or it's harder actually to even give it to someone else. So yeah, material things are your possessions, and yeah, and a man could give you happiness and love, but in the end it has to come from within, and something more meaningful than a new purse or a car or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Jenn 也说了，就是像传统的一些观念，或者是传统的女性都会认为说，自己的幸福可能最后是由一个你所爱的男人给提供的。那么，可是这种东西呢，很多女性也都认为它是不可靠的。那 Jenn 觉得说，真正的对于一个女人来说，真正的幸福是来自于内心的，而不是来自于外在。
非常好。Zappos was sold to Amazon at 1.2 million and ranked number 4 on Fortune's 100 best companies to work for list. As an online shoe store, Zappos is also a very huge success. What's the inner connection between your delivering happiness core belief and the Zappos success? What's the relationship between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, because I mean, at the time of closing, it was 1.2 billion the sales at Amazon, and why we bring that stat up is not to show like, you know, wow, it's been a great sale and that's what's most important. And the reality of the situation is that was a byproduct of the fact that Zappos really wanted to focus on employee satisfaction, employee happiness, and customer service. And it's because of those focusing on those two things that led to this sale to Amazon. So the point being, by focusing on things that we consider at Zappos and delivering happiness higher priority, which is company culture and customer service, then the byproducts of something like a sale to Amazon or higher revenues or higher profitability comes naturally and comes later. And I guess it's case in point that you can have that kind of company where you do focus on people and still be financially successful as well. So I think that's why that's why they're closely connected, because you can see it either way. Like from a business sense, it makes sense. From a people sense, it makes sense. And it's just kind of like common sense. Why wouldn't you want to do both things for any company?
那么Jenn刚才就说到他们不想刻意的强调说这个12亿美金的收购，不想刻意强调这些数字，或者说强调它商业上的成功。他认为 Zappos 主要是专注于员工满意度以及客户服务上面，而这些商业上的成功，或者说财务上的成功，或者说一个很高的售价，都是随之而来的一些副产品。那么这个成功也另一方面也说明了，就是说你可以作为一个公司，你可以专注于两方面，一方面是员工的幸福程度，另一方面同时你也可以随之获得商业上的成功。
Okay, thank you. But in China, in Japan, and other Asian countries, some companies still follow the abundance culture. Some of them even have the military management, but still they are very successful. Do you agree with this kind of culture, or which do you prefer? The ones like your company or the culture that existed in the Asian culture?
Well, I think it takes all kinds, and I think it takes all kinds of personalities and management style to run Everyone has their own individual personal preferences on your own values as a person or your values for a company and your styles of managing that. So I don't have an opinion against them, but I just know that personally I know what I support in terms of running a company that is more people focused and people driven, and by again making your employees happier first, the other stuff comes more naturally. Hats off to the companies that are doing it totally different, and it's just something that I don't subscribe to, but it's great if they don't choose to run that way.
Okay.
那每个公司每个人也好都有自己不同的价值取向，所以Jenn认为说他也不会就特别的去有哪方面的偏好。那他自己肯定是认同以人为本的公司文化，那他也同时也尊敬其他公司的自己的固有的文化。
Okay, very good. Jenn, in your blog, we mentioned that you have mentioned optimistic cannot solve the problem, but it can help us to face our situation. We also know that when examples are just the startup companies, you still have a lot of difficulties. Do you think the optimistic belief help you to overcome these obstacles and achieve success gradually?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it helps, because knowing that, I guess the expectation is that when you're growing anything like a company, there will be high moments and there will be low moments. And to know that going in, if you don't have a sense of optimism that you'll be able to overcome them, then that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that things will fail. And so kind of expecting that there will be bad times, but knowing that you're going to find ways to get out of it by being resourceful, by being creative. I mean, those are kind of like, even those adjectives itself is more of an optimistic approach to handling problems. So I definitely think it helps doing anything, not just growing a company.
Okay.
那Zappos 在创业之初也确实经历了非常艰苦的过程，所以说Jenn认为呢，就他们员工的乐观也好，然后还有他们自己创业者本身的乐观，绝对是帮Zappos能够走出创业之初的困境的一个非常重要的因素。
The following question is, personally, do you think if we work very hard, if we stay very positive, most of us can achieve our long-term goal? How to deal with the frustration if we cannot achieve it?
Well, I guess that comes with the territory of going through ups and downs. I mean, I think it comes back to why I was saying earlier, why higher purpose is so important, because if you have that in mind, if you have that greater goal, then going through the rough times will be that much easier to go through, because you know why you're doing it. I mean, so there's so many examples of Zappos going through really bad times, almost having to face bankruptcy and closing the doors, but because there was optimism, there was perseverance, there's creativity, they were able to overcome them. So yeah, it's challenging, but if you carry through with you and you always have that higher purpose in mind, and usually if it's money driven, that's not really from the heart, and so it'll be really discouraging. But if it's something else that you want to achieve for the greater world, then you still there's something in your heart that still wants to try for it no matter what.
So you believe that if we really persist on our goals, most of us can achieve it eventually?
I do. I really do. I think because it comes back to passion, and it goes back to an individual person. I think once someone, before any of the other stuff, the money stuff, I think someone has to really look deep down into who they are as a person. What is it that really drives them? What are they really passionate about in life? And then once you start pursuing those things, it becomes that much clearer as to what your purpose is and what you should be doing. And usually, from the people that I know and their stories are proof in point that the money will come later. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's actually true. I mean, in Tony's example, in my example, I mean, I know it's hard to, it's easier said than done, but it's true that money will come.
Okay, thank you.
所以Jenn他相信，就说只要你乐观，而且一直努力下去的话，你最终都会达到自己的目标。而这个目标呢，是他就是好像他刚才说到的快乐的3种境界一样，是最高的那种境界，是来自于内心的那种人生更高的追求，而不是说物质上的或者说金钱上的。然 然后他相信只要你能够坚信自己能够只要你有乐观的心态，然后一直朝这个目标努力，最后都会达到那个目标。而金钱和物质上的东西，他相信也会是随之而来的。就虽然说这个可能做起来比说起来要难，可是他相信就是说一定是可以做到的。
Yeah, it's an exciting belief. Okay. The book Deliver Happiness, which is created by you and by Tony and your team, has been sold at least 330,000 copies, and it also hits #1 among Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today bestseller list. It's very hard because a lot of competitors, there are a lot of popular books written by the other American writers. How did you come? It's so difficult in our mind. Why it is so successful?
It's an interesting question. I mean, we really didn't know what to expect other than Tony and I just locked ourselves in a cabin and just worked on this, and it came out the way it is. It's part autobiographical of Tony's story, part business book, Zappos and the company sold to Microsoft Public Exchange, and then ultimately to this whole idea of the science of happiness and how you can actually apply that to your business and in life. And so what was interesting is that we thought, businesses would react to it because it's a business book. But what we didn't anticipate was that the non-business people also reacted to it. So like people working in hospitals, government nonprofits, education, even mothers and fathers would email us saying how this book affected their lives. And so once it got translated in more and more languages, I think we're up to like 17 now, we started hearing a similar response from all over the world. And so it was really intriguing that the sense of happiness is kind of a universal language, because in the end you can apply it to no matter where you are in life, how old you are, whether or not you're religious. There are simple ways to increase your happiness outside of material wealth. There's different frameworks that we talk about in the book, but things like perceived control of your life and decisions, perceived progress, so always growing and developing and learning, connectedness, so the number and depth of your relationships, and higher purpose. Having that really adds to your happiness. So I think that's what was really unexpected for us, but what got us so excited to create a company out of it, because there's something there that people want to change in their lives.
那就是在刚开始写这本书的时候呢，Jenn 和 Tony 也没有想到会有这么大的成功，他们只是说把自己关在一个小房间里，然后就写了这本书，然后而且有一部分也是跟自传有关的。那在这本书完成之后呢，他们就收到了意想不到的成功，因为这本来是一本商业书籍，可是最后就从各行各业的人士，包括一些父亲啊、母亲啊，他们都有非常热烈的反响。所以这从另一个角度呢，也说明了快乐是一个世界的语言。那这本书传递的也是一个普世价值，所以它才会这么的成功。那这本书意想不到的成功呢，也启发了他们去创造 Delivering Happiness 这个公司。
Yeah, I totally agree because I'm so attracted by your title. Chief Officer of Happiness, giving happiness. So, yeah, it's very interesting. With the great success of Deliver Happiness, you made speeches all across the United States in the universities and other institutes. You once shared that you didn't follow your parents' wish. There was a joke. You said you come across so many obstacles generation by generation, then you choose a major to study yourself. Were your parents very disappointed at your decision, and finally do they agree with your decision?
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a interesting ride, especially since the book came out. I mean, even I just actually got back from Amsterdam to do a talk there, so it's really interesting to see how it's expanding beyond just the U.S. And my parents, they were traditional, but they came here when they were in high school, that age. So I understand why they wanted certain things for me, and if I look at it in the way that their one hope was for me to have greater opportunity, and they succeeded. And so when I told them that I wanted to major in Asian American Studies, they really were not happy. But I guess I've always been very determined in things I do, and so I just, I stuck to my guns and I majored in it, and I had an interesting road of like ups and downs. I had a great job out of college just because I was lucky and the internet was there, so I made, I had the job, money, title, status. Then I lost it because of the layoffs, and so that's what really made me dig deep into, okay, so what is it that I want to do for the rest of my life that I wouldn't fear failure? Because that was a big question that I would never want to answer. And so I chose little things along the way that were meaningful to me, and it was totally unrelated to business. It was just things that I thought were fulfilling, like writing, design, filmmaking, things like that led me to this path of being, CEO and Chief Happiness Officer of delivering happiness. And so I think it's finally now they can breathe a sigh of relief that they actually feel like I have a job, and all those things. And so it's come full circle, but now they respect. Well, I know my mom at least respects what I'm doing now. My dad passed away, so I'm not sure what he feels about it, but I'm hoping he does feel respectful of my decisions. So
he would be very proud of you.
Okay.
所以说Jenn 呢，她一开始选择那个学习就是美国亚裔文化，然后父母是面临了很大的就是父母那方面的阻碍的，因为父母会觉得说你就在亚洲文化你都会去学一些更加就是赚钱的职位或者说更有前途的一些专业这样子。可是呢就是 Lin 在刚刚就从大学毕业以后就有一份很好的工作，可是最后他就离开了这个行业。那现在呢，他觉得就是他是追随自己内心的更高的追求，然后现在走到了今天这个位置，然后他相信说现在父母应该也是对他很满意的。
Very good. There is a real example. For example, the lady she's sitting beside you, her major is finance engineering, but her true love is communications, like medias, broadcasters. But it's easier to find a job in Wall Street and get high payment, but it's so difficult to work in the media industry in another culture, in another country. So you suggest her, was this her dream?
Yeah. I mean, everyone has their own tolerance of risk.
Right. It's all about risk.
So some people just have a tendency to want to be risk averse, want to be safe, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to feel safe that you have a house, you want to feel safe you have enough savings for the rest of your life. That's one way to look at it, but then there's others that feel like, well, when their life is over, they're like, well, what happened? Why did I not pursue the things I wanted in my life? And so I guess I look at it that way. I mean, at the end of the day, it's the things that you didn't do that you're going to think about, in the final,
Because at first, when I stepped into banking, I thought like, well, maybe I earn some money, and then by the time I turn 30, I start doing things that I love.
Yeah.
And then I look at like my senior bankers, and I realized, that's not going to happen if I go to banking.
Right.
Because like once you're really involved in banking, and you become more and more risk averse. So that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Very good. So welcome to our media industry. Say goodbye to your finance major. Okay, we are very interested in the relationship between you and Tony Hsieh. You have known each other for almost 10 years or more than 10 years?
We met in 99, so...
Yeah. More than 10 years. How did you cooperate with each other so perfectly? Have you considered a closer relationship with him? I mean, personally.
Funny question. No. How do we? Well, I think it was just your first question. How do we connect? It was just when we first met, we always had. Implicit understanding of just being able to really be truthful and honest about everything, and we had, I don't know, just very comfortable in talking about anything. So that was always there, and I think that's what helped connect us as people, and then as friends. And then as we got older, we had different paths, but very parallel in the sense of we live different lives, but we have very similar values of what's most important, and in that way, we kind of grew together over all these years. And so, I mean, she's like one of my best friends, and I think I'm really grateful and happy about our relationship. I don't know about the future. I don't really predict too much, so I just know I'm happy with things as they are.
Okay. Tony is very popular in the girls group. I mean, a lot of audience they told me, they say they admire Tony very much because he graduated from Harvard and is rich and very young, and he's still single. So the colleagues, your employees are attractive by himself. They come join your company because they admire Tony in person.
You mean do they join the company because they want to marry Tony? Is that what you're saying?
Not only marry. And he's like a hero in their minds, kind of.
I think what Tony brings to an organization or his friends or his companies is that he's very low key. Like he's, you wouldn't think he's done all these things. He's very down to earth and quiet. He's actually really shy. People think people mistake that for being like they don't like Tony doesn't like them, but the reality is he's just a very shy guy. And so what Tony's able to do is he's very creative and he has vision, and he's beyond that able to make them happen. And so anyone that's able to do those kind of things, I think naturally draws people, because not everyone can do both have a vision and execute on it.
Okay, very interesting.
那首先，Jenn 谈到他跟 Tony 是99年就认识的，然后他们这么多年的好朋友，他们尽管自己有不同的人生的道路，但他们的价值有共同的价值取向，所以说他们可以一直这么默契的合作这么多年。那然后Jenn 也非常的珍惜这段友谊，那未来怎么样也不好说。那关于 Tony 本人呢，Jenn 说他是一个非常低调的人。是一个非常害羞的人，但是就是作为一个公司的领袖来说的话，他是非常有远见，同时也是非常有执行力的。那这两个因素在一个领袖身上就能够造就一个杰出的领袖。
Very good. The final question is, what's your career and life goals in the next 10 to 15 years?
I always kind of laugh at those questions, because if you asked me that 10, 15 years ago, or even a year ago, I wouldn't even say what I'm doing today. And that's just because there's so many things that happen in the course of life that you just never know what's going to happen. I know what's going to stay the same in the sense of what's most meaningful to me and the people around me and the people that I care about. Delivering happiness is kind of taking a life of its own, and I'd love to see that grow. If not for the number one purpose of trying to help people make changes, small or big, in their life to make them happier people, themselves and to each other. So that's my grand vision of delivering happiness in my life. I don't have anything specific beyond that.
There's some so-called expert. They told us you have a very high long-term goal and you have a 10 years goal. When you achieve it, you feel very happy. So we are curious about your goals in the next 10 years.
So that's the funny thing with happiness, is because we as humans have a tendency to naturally say, when I achieve this, then I'll be happy, or when I get this, then I'll be happy. But the reality of how I look at it is like, why not be happy now and be happy with what we have, and which I am. So no matter what happens in 10 years, I'll know today that I'm doing my best to spread happiness in the world. And so yeah, that's my belief.
Thank you.
那Jenn 说他自己如果在10年前或者说1、2年前问他对未来5到10年的规划的话，他可能都不会想到今天会在做自己所来做的事情。所以说呢，关于未来的规划，他只能说就是Delivering Happiness 这个公司能够给更多的人带来帮助，不管大小也好，能够让人改善人们的生活，让人更加的快乐，这是他公司的一个短期的规划。对他自己来说的话，他觉得只要做好自己想做的事情，他并没有就是特别的一个具体的目标来说5到10年来实现这样子。
非常非常感谢Jenn， 也非常感谢周瑾。就是在第一次跟 Zappos 员工去联络的时候呢，我们就已经被 Zappos 员工那种高效、亲和和快乐所感染。那目前呢，国内有很多的企业的员工，他们工作时间很长，压力很大，幸福感也在流失。那么也希望通过我们这次的采访呢，使越来越多的企业领导者意识到员工的幸福感的重要性。只有快乐的员工才能赢得客户的快乐，企业呢才能会走上一个健康成长的一个良性的循环。Thanks again, Jane. You give us so much good advice. We really appreciate. And thanks, 周瑾.
Thank you.
Great. Okay.